Hi and welcome to Stephan Livera podcast, a show about Bitcoin. Today for episode 283, my guest is Alex Gladstein, CSO of HRF, Human Rights Foundation, and we break down some of the news around El Salvador and Bitcoin legal tender. We talk about the good, the bad, privacy, Lightning, the IMF, what could go wrong from here, as well as the opportunities and what this could mean for human rights and freedom. This show is brought to you by Swan Bitcoin. Swan Bitcoin holds a deep conviction that Bitcoin is the future of money, and Swan's aim is to help you maximize your position in this dominant digital monetary network. As a Swan private client, you will have unlimited access to their team, strategic resources, and commitment to Bitcoin education. Bitcoin is an asymmetric investment of unparalleled proportions, rapidly becoming the preeminent wealth preservation asset for every individual and institution in the world. An opportunity like this to build and preserve legacy-impacting wealth for your family or company will not likely be seen again in our lifetimes. The Swan private team stands ready to earn the right to walk alongside you on every step of this journey into the future of money. Learn more at swanbitcoin.com/private or email the CEO Corey Clipston directly at corey@swanbitcoin.com. Are you looking to borrow against your Bitcoin or earn some interest on your stablecoins? Lend at HODL HODL is a peer-to-peer Bitcoin-backed lending platform. With this platform on stablecoins, you can earn an average of 25% by lending them out. And if you need some liquidity, you can borrow against your Bitcoin. And remember, you still hold one key in the 2 of 3 multi-signature controlling your Bitcoin during the loan period. HODL HODL does not hold your funds. So this is a peer-to-peer lending and borrowing directly between users. You set your own terms and put up offers depending on how long you want to borrow or lend and the interest rate. Go to lend.hodlhodl.com. Are you interested to get involved with Bitcoin mining? Compass is an online marketplace making it easier for everyone to do that. This is the anti-cloud mining option. You select an ASIC machine, it is shipped to a facility that you choose that Compass have vetted, and you can start mining. So for years we've heard mining was only profitable if you're investing tons of money. You know, not everyone's got access to a volcano, but now with Compass, everyone is able to tap into economies of scale and access reasonably priced hardware and cheap industrial power rates. So if you're unsure about how to get started, Compass offer hardware and hosting bundles. You don't have to have advanced technical knowledge. You can quickly get started. So go visit compassmining.io and start mining Bitcoin today. Alex, welcome back to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here. It feels like an eternity every month in Bitcoin.
It does. So many things are going on. So for context for listeners, we are recording this basically the morning. So for me in Sydney, it's 8 a.m. Thursday, the 10th of June, and we are basically the day after the El Salvador Bitcoin legal tender act or bill passing. Alex, I'm sure you'll have lots of comments on all of this because President Bukele actually came into a Twitter Spaces hosted by Nick Carter. And Alex, you were actually up on stage, and I was listening in just as a pleb. But let's get your initial reaction to all of this.
Wow. Well, where do we begin? I wanted to begin actually just by reflecting on a essay that Alan Farrington wrote called Wittgenstein's Money. And I was listening to it the other day, courtesy Guy Swan and his Bitcoin Audible work. And, he's talking about this idea of like how conventional economists and the mainstream media and policymakers, like they don't think Bitcoin is money because it doesn't display moneyness, right? Or it doesn't display the full range of moneyness, or it's not money enough. And, the idea is to kind of ask like, well, what if it was becoming money? What would that look like? And here we go. Here's what it would look like, right? This is literally what it would look like. It would start as a small project run by individuals. It would later grow in the summer of 2020 onto the narrative of corporations acquiring it for their balance sheet. It would really strengthen around this narrative as digital gold and as a store of value after really proving itself over a decade as something that not just preserves, but dramatically appreciates purchasing power. It would be sent to stratospheric levels by Fortune 500 companies like Tesla, for example, which were buying it by the billions on their balance sheet. And then that's kind of like the end of part one of the store of value digital gold piece. And what you've seen happen in the last few days, sparked by a small community in El Zonte in El Salvador, and the amazing work of Mike Peterson and so many others, and Miles Suter, and then the incredible vision of Jack Mahler's, and the curiosity of a young kind of brazen government has brought us to the point where now we are all of a sudden thinking about Bitcoin as a medium of exchange in a much more serious way, and not just as a store of value. But this is what it would look like. Like,
Exactly.
You're going to have over time the evolution of this money, and you're going to have these historic events which trigger step functions in the moneyness of the good, right, of the asset, of the network.
Yeah.
And here we are. So now you have a really big surprise, because most people, like, I think you and me probably, have always thought or known that government adoption was inevitable. But we, I'll speak for myself. I thought it would be a central bank adding it as, like, an asset on the balance sheet. I did not think it was going to be legal tender first, and with a focus on payments and networking and transactions. That to me is really shocking, and I think it really shocked a lot of people. And on last night, President Bukele mentioned that they're going to buy like close to $150 million of Bitcoin, sure, but it's not going to be like for their central bank. It's going to be to support this payment infrastructure. So this, I think, was really surprising, and that's what I wanted to start with, is just that, like, we continue to be on this journey of Bitcoin monetizing its way into existence, right?
Yeah, absolutely agreed on the point about it's just continually getting bigger and bigger and better and better. And it's funny that the detractors of Bitcoin, they're always trying to say, oh, see, you can't actually spend it, or there's not that many people using it,
Legal tender anywhere. So, and then it's like, that's the thing they use. So I'm debating all these economists all the time, neoclassical or whomever, and they're always like, well, Bitcoin's not money because it's not a legal tender anywhere. Okay, so now we have it.
It's ever shifting goalposts, right?
And now they've come up with other excuses. Oh, it's, a small country. Oh, it's, it's all this cope, so much salt from so many people. And you can really see out there who's for freedom and who's for Bitcoin and who's not. I mean, the people who are for Bitcoin and freedom, this is not hype. This is a genuinely exciting, mind-blowing day. And you can tell who's not, because they're like, they're just like, complaining. There's cope and salt, and it's like bad news somehow. Let me tell you what would have been bad news, Stephan. Bad news would have been the China coin.
Yeah.
Okay. Bad news would have been a ban of Bitcoin. Bad news would have been a CBDC that's going to track all your stuff. Adopting freedom money as your legal tender is not bad news, and not for anybody. So I just don't want to hear it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. And so just to summarize, maybe some listeners aren't familiar with the details of the law, but some of the key points are essentially that El Salvador will now have, in some sense, dual main legal tenders, right? You'll have US dollar and Bitcoin. And
yes,
taxes may be paid in Bitcoin. In terms of the accounting for businesses in El Salvador, they can still do their accounting in US dollar. But now the government, and as you're touching on this, they are now running essentially this development bank in El Salvador will be operating a trust fund, which will hold some Bitcoin and essentially do the auto conversion, because they understand that for some merchants in El Salvador, they may not be willing to take the Bitcoin price risk. So the end user customer may pay with Bitcoin using a Lightning, maybe using Strike or any other Lightning wallet, and that's important. And then the government fund will essentially pay out in US dollar and take on some of that price risk for the merchant to sort of help ease this process. Now, one point that some people have said, and I think there's some truth to this, but I think it's just more like we have to recognize that on net it is a benefit, which is that the government is now mandating that people accept Bitcoin, which is a coercion, right? So I think if we were going to be purist libertarians about it, which not everyone's a libertarian, first of all, but if I was going to be purist libertarian, I would say it should be there should be no legal tender laws. You should be allowed to use whatever you want instead of the government forcing people. Now, some people were latching onto this, people like George Selgin, who is again a little bit of a detractor of Bitcoin and often nitpicking here and there. But I think, like you said, it could have been so much worse, right? They could have started their own shitcoin. They could have started a surveillance coin. They could have
worked with China. They could have banned Bitcoin, right? So
there could have been no favorable CGT. They could have used, they could have spoken about it like crypto instead of very specifically saying this is a Bitcoin legal tender, right?
Yeah. No, I thought that was amazing when people were asking the president about the other coins, and he was just like, listen, this is a Bitcoin bill. Nothing we can do to stop new businesses from coming here, but this is a Bitcoin bill. And yeah, I mean, look, with regard to Article 7 of the bill, it's not good, and we should try to get it repealed. I mean, no one should be forced to do anything. But there is Article 12, which I feel like a lot of people just like conveniently ignored, which basically says that for anyone who's been unable to or somehow cannot get whether it's, I guess, a wallet, it would essentially on a smartphone or on a some sort of payment technology, they don't have to use Bitcoin. So, and I just get the sense, and maybe I'm wrong, we will see how this plays out, but I get the sense that the goal here is a government that wants to aggressively transform its payments infrastructure and wants to be leading the world and innovative and wants to hire Jack Mallers instead of Swift to, like, if you think about that, that's so crazy. Instead of like going with the US government, IMF, Swift kind of mafia, we're going to go with Jack Mallers and the Lightning Network. I mean, to handle international payments and stuff. I mean, that is just really amazing. I mean, it's, again, they're not going with like a megacorp here to build their government wallet and to advise them all this. They're not going with some huge, multinational corporation. They're going with Jack Mallers, and who's a hardcore Bitcoin activist who's completely into the values that you and I think, care about. So I don't know. I think it's really interesting. And I get the sense that these articles and this thing was pushed through so quickly for a pretty good reason. The government of the United States is not like ready for this. Like, we're not, the IMF, the US government, the State Department, they're like not sure what's happening. They are not they don't know really what Bitcoin is versus blockchain or crypto. They're just like not very well, like maybe people do at like FinCEN. Okay, maybe. And I would even say a lot of them, like even at FinCEN, don't really know what the Lightning Network is. But at the State Department, no, man, they're clueless. Like, they don't know like Bitcoin from BitConnect, like a lot of them. I'm being 100% serious here. So this is like a big wake up call. And I think that Bukele and his clan or whatever knew that if they force this thing through quickly, what are they going to do? What is the U.S. going to do? So, I think that they were worried maybe about the IMF. I mean, he said he had a meeting with the IMF tomorrow. I mean, we'll see how that goes. But, people are worried about retribution, like risk premium on bonds, artificially imposed, worried about like complications with, paying El Salvador the rest of the loan, things like that. So we'll see. I mean, those are all kind of like, very 1970s, 80 Cold War style heavy-handed tactics. I don't know if the U.S. government's going to do that stuff anymore. We're just going to have to see. But I think they rushed it through, and I think a lot more dialogue would have probably. I think we could have gotten 7 out of there had we had like a sustained conversation. And I don't think that's really what, I don't think that they, I mean, first of all, I don't think that they want to force Bitcoin at every transaction. I mean, he was really quite clear in the conversation that the dollar is really going to, it's still the unit of account. It's still going to be obviously the main currency. So people will still use dollars. So I just, let's see. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm too optimistic, but I don't really see a situation where someone gets like fined or like arrested for like refusing to use Bitcoin. That seems like not what's happening here. And there's even an article that's specifically lays out that shouldn't happen. So I do agree with you that no one should be compelled to do anything. But on the other hand, it is amazing to watch a government aggressively promote freedom money, open source, permissionless confiscation and censorship resistant money. I mean, this is something that I don't think we saw coming this early in this cycle. I think a lot of people had, price predictions that have been unfulfilled, although 65K is pretty serious. But what I don't think people were predicting was this. I mean, this is especially just so few months after Tesla. That was early February. So we're 4 months or so after a Fortune 500 company puts it on its balance sheet, we have nation state adoption. That is an extremely short period of time. Things are happening really, really quickly. And then as you saw, almost like from Mexico to Argentina to Colombia, Panama to Paraguay to Ecuador to Costa Rica. I mean, there's Latin American politicians all across the region now saying we should do something similar. We had the chief innovation officer of Colombia on the Twitter Spaces last night, and he was like, "Yeah, we love Bitcoin. We're going to try and like put this through something similar. We're discussing it." I mean, it's crazy to watch, but Latin America, you could see where this is potentially going, where like maybe they become this region which is very Bitcoin friendly, where most of the countries have Bitcoin as legal tender. There's a lot of Bitcoin businesses in Latin America. I mean, that would be interesting. So that's one potential outcome where we're going. And I think what's so interesting, just to conclude this piece here, is that this is an alternative to the dollar hegemony, right? Which I've been writing about a lot lately with regard to how it got created with the petrodollar system and all that. But I mean, what used to be the like alternative to US foreign policy was like communism. It's like, radical redistributionist violence, right? The fact that the new alternative is Bitcoin, which is this peaceful, like free money, is really staggering to think about. I mean, if you think about the geopolitical path of the world and I mean, violent guerrillas and stuff, and it's like, okay, now we're just going to go with Bitcoin. Really? I mean, is that happening? And
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
And I'll tell you one thing that's funny with that is
Totally.
that they are voluntarily restricting their own power, right? Now, if you look at the way someone like Mises would have thought about sound money,
Yeah.
it's like a check on the government. It's like it should be thought of in the same category as like a Bill of Rights, or like it's something to protect you and me and all of our rights. And so it's interesting that they are voluntarily restricting into this, right?
Absolutely. And he said this when somebody asked him about it, and he was like, look, we're going to do it. We're going to open the door. We don't know what's on the other side, but we won't control it because we can't, and I think they know that at some deep level. I will say this is the world we live in, and everything will follow from here, and we don't get a do-over. But I think a dollarized country was a good bet for this to happen because they already don't have that power, right? They have some of it, right? They can freeze bank accounts and stuff. So they can do that, but they can't really debase the currency so much because they literally use dollar accounts, and they don't print their own money. So a dollarized country was probably likely to be one of the first anyway. And this gives them like a hedge against U.S. foreign policy. And that's essentially, or rather U.S. monetary policy. And that's what Jack Mallers said in his amazing, speech in Miami at the Bitcoin conference, was essentially that these people face the negative externalities of extreme debt monetization and expansion in the United States, which benefit the coastal elites and asset holders, but not the lower classes, and certainly not El Salvador, which is like this client state. So this young president and his family, and we can get into how democratic or not they are later. But the point is, they're looking at this as like a hedge, kind of like an alternative. Like, okay, well, we can do the Bitcoin standard and see where that goes. And they're looking at this from a perspective of foreign investment, excitement. Think about it this way: this is a country that's had decades of civil war, unrest, super high murder rates. I mean, all of a sudden, now people are like really excited about El Salvador. I mean, this is like light at the end of a very dark tunnel. And if you think about it for the president himself, it's kind of like this thing, this like weird, really, I was talking about this with a lot of people at the Bitcoin conference, like people like Gigi and others, but Bitcoin's kind of got this chemical impact on your brain. Like when you start talking about it publicly, you get a lot of engagement. Oh, like, oh, well, maybe I should talk a little more about it. And then, oh, wow, like maybe I should learn more. Oh, now I'm going to put it in my profile and I'm going to be like the Bitcoin. It really like latches in there and fulfills something, and it gives you something. And then you want to talk more about it. And that's what he realized. And he noticed Bitcoin Beach. And I know this because Mike Peterson was on the space, and he was like, Mike, you guys you were the ones who started this, and noticed the circular economy, noticed it spreading, noticed Jack Mallers, noticed Strike becoming the biggest app in the country, noticed the fact that Salvadorans have this huge reliance on remittance. 22% of the economy is based on money coming back from the US. Notice the fact that the infrastructure sucked and 70% of people don't have bank accounts, and they all have to take these long bus rides that are really dangerous to go get the cash that their family sends them, risk getting robbed. And notice that internet access is on the rise, and it's now about 50% in the country, and it's heading higher every day. And he probably looked at that, maybe analyzed that a little bit. But at the end of the day, the bigger thing, I'm guessing, based on what I've observed of this guy, is that he's a narcissist, and he knew he would get really famous, and like he's really famous, man. Like, so I'm all about it. If we want to have a generous interpretation, and I just laid out like the optimistic case for why he did this is he thinks he can transform his country and really bring a lot of foreign investment and interest in infrastructure. Fine, but we can also just take the more cynical view that he knew at some level that he was watching what was happening. And he was like, if I do this, I'm going to be famous for the rest of my life. And lo and behold, no one had heard of this guy outside of like Latin American politics before, now he's going to be very famous, and he's going to be like a keynote at Davos and all that stuff. He's going to be like a star, right? So Bitcoin did that for him. Nothing else. Bitcoin did that for him. We'll see. We may never know what was actually the reasoning here, but he seems very open. Really crazy was on the Twitter spaces was I like asked. Someone messaged me because like I was one of the handful of people on stage. So I was getting all this inbound from like people being like, can you ask him this? Can you ask him that? So I asked him a question about the wallets, from our friend who was Bitcoin Q&A or something like that. And he was like, can you please ask him to clarify? Like, this isn't going to be like some government wallet only and you get arrested if you have some other wallet. So I wanted to clarify that for our freedom loving friends. And look, he could be lying, but he said his answer was like, definitely not. Like, we're going to work with Strike to make an official wallet, but like you can use any wallet you want. And that probably logistically makes sense. The other one I got to ask was, are you going to do mining?
Yeah.
Because there hasn't really been a lot of state mining or really any,
right.
Like we know that states are involved in some ways, but not like openly, right? Not like Canada's doing Bitcoin mining for the government. There's no like government operations quite yet. Like we know Iran's kind of like taxing miners and some countries are incentivizing them and the Chinese government allows a lot of it, etc. But like, it doesn't appear that there's a lot of like, if any, actual government operations. So I was like, are you guys going to mine? And he literally was like, I haven't thought about that yet. And then he kind of stopped for a second and was like, you know what? Like, actually, we have all this stranded geothermal energy because of our volcanoes. And he started going into detail about it. And he's like, we're going to do that. And I'm like, wow, okay. Today, he's been tweeting, he tasked like the Minister of Energy with like setting up this volcano mine. And then he posted a video like 2 hours ago of them with a new well that they had dug this morning, where his engineers, with 95 megawatts is no freaking joke, man. So now you're watching a country that has apparently about 650 stranded megawatts of geothermal. I mean, they're gonna do very well there. And that's just, that can go straight to the state, people as welfare. It can power a grid. I mean, it can connect, you can use that income to connect, other parts of an electric grid to that split space and create communities. There's a lot of things that can be done with that money. So
That's pretty cool.
Man, that's really exciting that in this age as Bitcoin Twitter people, we can just kind of meme things into reality. It was really crazy, man. I mean, really wild. So at the end of the day, this guy, he saw this opportunity, he took it, he ran with it, and he started he's changed the world. And what's a little, look, he's an autocrat in many ways. I mean, it is a democracy, okay? It's what we probably call flawed democracy or like a partial democracy, just because he has this like very uncomfortable supermajority. He's done stuff like he brought the military into the Congress last year to like force them to sign a bill. He sacked a couple judges. Now, his defenders, who are legion and the majority of the country, probably, from what I understand, they'll say stuff like, well, it's the old corrupt guard that he's like trying to get rid of. And that's just such a nuanced conversation. And that's partially very true. I mean, who are the other political options besides his party? Marxists on the left and then the ultra right. So he's like this young millennial kind of a character, and the older conservative guard doesn't like him. So, maybe it's true that the judges are whatever. But as human rights activists, we don't like to see infringements on the democratic process like that. We're not going to be celebrating him personally, but we're going to be celebrating the action and the policy for sure. And I think that's a nuance that's actually important. I mean, we think about things like like we didn't celebrate King John, we celebrated the Magna Carta, right? So, there's going to be in history all kinds of bad leaders that like either give in to people power or give in to incentives and change their nation. And that action should be celebrated. We should be incentivizing leaders to launch the Bitcoin standard. This is like very good for freedom, for an empowerment for the people. So anyway, long-winded take to say that we now have the Bitcoin standard in a nation state. And here we are, man. I mean, it's kind of crazy to say it,
Yeah, of course. And this also ties into a comment, and I know this is part of, something you've been talking about, is what we might term Trojan horse theory. So tell us a little bit about that idea, this idea of Bitcoin as a Trojan horse.
Yeah, essentially, just to briefly recap, in the classic tale, in classic mythology, there's like this long protracted war between the Greeks and the Trojans, and Greeks cannot penetrate the city of Troy. So inspired by Minerva or Athena, depending on whether you're, following Latin or Greek, Homer's, Odysseus character, he gets this inspiration from Athena to create essentially this big horse and trick the Trojans. So, and this is actually described in the Aeneid, rather, by Virgil. And you read this, and essentially they create this big, beautiful, kind of really enticing looking prize. And then they like pretend to leave, the Greeks, and then they're really hiding, nearby. And they leave one soldier behind, and then the Trojans are like looking at it, debating. Cassandra and Laocoon are like, no, it's a trick. Let's not do it. But then they get dispatched, and the Trojans are like, let's bring it in. And they bring the horse in because they think it's going to like give them power. And at night, of course, the Greeks come out of the horse. They let the rest of the army in, and the Greeks win. So the Trojan horse has been a term for a long time in computer science of like something that looks benign, but actually is quite harmful. So yeah, I mean, the idea of Bitcoin's Trojan horse theory is that people adopt it for their own self-interest because it's shiny and pretty and because it has NGU technology. And that's largely what we saw right before, at least the previous few days here, was we were in that kind of era of Bitcoin as like digital gold, right? And it was being adopted by institutions, by individuals, as like something to hold on to, as like this asset. And those people were always very careful to not really go into the cypherpunk qualities of Bitcoin or talk about its, censorship resistance or programmability, or they would never mention anything like Taproot, or, they wouldn't really talk too much about the Lightning Network. All these incredible things that makes Bitcoin a strong freedom tool, they didn't really talk about. But the thing is, like the NGU and the Freedom Go Up, the FGU are like tied together. So you're kind of getting this, you're sitting there and you're looking at this really like enticing asset to invest in or buy, and you're acquiring it. But in doing so, you're like strengthening what's inside of it, and you're allowing that financial freedom, really. So this is exactly how I described it in an essay I wrote about a couple months ago in Bitcoin Magazine, where not just corporations, but one day nation states would go after Bitcoin, what it brings them. Now, maybe that's fame, maybe that's fortune, but they can't separate it from the impact it's going to have on the rest of the community, the rest of the network, right? So again, I don't know whether it's fame or fortune that this guy's after. He's certainly, I don't think you can call him a Democrat. You know what I mean? I don't think that's what he's after here. I think we just need to be realistic. But guess what? It doesn't matter. And he's going to be co-opted into promoting freedom anyway. Even if he doesn't realize it, like he's now going to be aggressively pursuing a program to get Bitcoin into the hands of all of his citizens, which over time reduces his power over them, right? It's like that's Trojan horse theory, and we're literally watching it play out. Which is
and so I am thinking here of some members in the Bitcoin Twitter space and Bitcoin community world who maybe are a little more bearish on that aspect. Right now, of course, I'm bullish. I'm like you. I think number go up also ties in with freedom go up long term. And so I think we can, even if there were some concern about the coercion aspect, I think, well, it's a net win. We should be positive. We should be, celebrating this idea. But there are some people out there who might say, well, look, Bitcoin's been out there and actually it's resulting in, capital gains tax to the state, and therefore the state's getting bigger. Or, you guys talk about this thing of it's making the state smaller or giving people back their freedom, but we're living in a world with continual surveillance, right? And it's sort of,
sure.
I guess I'm thinking a little bit about that, even though really I kind of disagree with that point of view. But there are people out there who maybe maybe a little bit more paranoid or a little bit more. And hey, look, some paranoia is good. People need to think about what are the risks, and maybe that ties into the next question.
Yeah.
What could go wrong here, right? Could it be that the IMF bring pressure and say, if you do not kowtow to our way, we won't give you loans, and then you're going to struggle? Or maybe if the US government, could there be pressure brought there? Do you have any ideas there?
So I think like the main argument, like the reason why people are upset about like the NGU bros or whatever, I don't think that comes from place of realizing that Bitcoin is the best money and it's just going to be very valuable for humans because it's really effective at what it does. I think it comes from a place of realizing that the NGU people will actively cooperate with the state and its surveillance and control mechanisms to try and capture as much Bitcoin as possible and to make lives miserable for Bitcoin users, which is a real risk, right? So the interesting part is laws and regulations restricting the use of Bitcoin and co-opting it were kind of, it's funny because that's what we were worried about a few months ago. So much so that I wrote this long essay for Quillette called Can Governments Ban Bitcoin? And it's ironic because at the end, I kind of, again, I hint at the Trojan horse thing and I'm like, well, the incentives say that ultimately they won't ban it. They'll actually adopt it. And it's just kind of crazy to see it happen in front of our eyes. But sure, I mean, I think that, what could go wrong with Bitcoin has always been, at least in advanced democracies like the United States, like too much regulatory capture. And I've never been one to agree that Wall Street can like co-opt and like kill Bitcoin. I just don't agree fundamentally. I don't think that's how it works. And it's not how it works technically. And I don't think it's how it works from an incentive point of view. But a lot of people say that. Here in El Salvador, what could go wrong? Well, there's a lot of things. I mean, yeah, as you mentioned, foreign, at the foreign level, you could have US or IMF influence to force him to like backtrack. I guess what I'm saying is that the incentive structure is such that today I don't know how much we're going to twist his arm. I don't know how much we can. Look, if it was the 1970s, dude might die in a freaking mysterious plane crash tomorrow. Like, that's what we used to do to people who like did stuff like this to us, right? Ditto the Soviets or the Brits or any like empire, right? So I just don't know if we're doing that anymore, man. Like, Russia's threatening our monetary dominance, and we're not even going to go after the Nord Stream head for sanctions. We're not. So, I mean, I think we reached the apex of our power about 15 years ago, sort of right after the Iraq War. I mean, which I thought in many ways was waged in order to help sort of protect American hegemony, especially the petrodollar system. I just don't think we can do that stuff anymore. So we'll see. I just think also Bitcoin is catching people by surprise, and it makes it harder to go after if you don't really know what it is, right? So we'll see. I think, IMF, US power, that could be one thing that throws it for a loop. But let's say that happens. I mean, the people, this is a genie that is open source code that's out of the bottle, man. Like, you can't, it's like out of the lamp. Like, all of a sudden, I mean, for the last 4 days, everyone's been talking about in El Salvador is like, what is our president doing? What is Bitcoin? Like, I want to learn more. Like, it's in all the newspapers. Like, it's in all the coffee shops. It's in all the taxis. It's in all the work sites. It's at the water cooler. It's everywhere. So what are people just going to forget? No, they're not. And like, so I don't know how reversible it is at a social level. That is a threat. I mean, I think in El Salvador, a risk is that it becomes too centralized in terms of the network, and it basically becomes too much of a bank. Now, that's where Bitcoin's attributes are really helpful, because as long as Strike is the one contracted to do it, I think we can be assured that you can pay out of Strike to any other Bitcoin or Lightning address. I think that people need to know that, generally speaking, Strike is like for a Salvadoran, when they're holding it, it's a dollar-denominated USDT account, right? That has KYC, right? So, I mean, what we really want is the ability of Strike to be able to receive payments instantly from anywhere in the world. And then obviously this is in a custodial way being run by Strike, and they're doing it with Lightning, like instantly. But as long as you're able to withdraw or pay out to another invoice, I think we're good there, because it allows people to have this dual setup where they have like a custodial checking account, and then they have their like non-KYC sovereign savings account that they control. And I think that's probably the best compromise we could ask for like a nationally built system, at least for now. So some Bitcoiners may be upset with that because it's not like pure Bitcoin. But I mean, let's just be realistic. That's probably the best we can hope for here. And as long as there's no rule against having your own wallet, I mean, I think it'll grow a lot. I mean, if you talk to Mike from Bitcoin Beach, they obviously, they made their own wallet there, and people use Lightning in a way that's not reliant on any sort of app or whatever. Meaning you don't have to rely on a custodial service or whatever. So
yeah, so
I think that's pretty
neat. And you're right. And so
those are risks, mm-hmm. right? Those are risks, both from foreign and internally. I think he's so popular right now, rather has so many seats, whether it's legitimate or not. Like, I mean, there's not going to be they're not going to reverse it. You have to understand the incentive here that this has given like some hope to this nation. Like, I don't think they're going to go backwards on this. So if anything, the challenges are going to be foreign or like technical, right? But this is the full Bitcoin standard package, right? It's like legal tender, mining it with local resources, and attracting foreign capital, building Bitcoin communities, building a Bitcoin payments infrastructure, and then eventually getting it into the central bank. That's the full Bitcoin standard stack right there. So they look very much on that track. And again, I think that there's more upsides than downsides, certainly. I mean, I guess one other downside I'd mention, of course, is that we lionize this guy too much. But look, Bitcoiners got to know you can't have heroes. We just went through this, right? Like, do not lionize this guy. Like, he could be really bad. I like what I see in terms of like what he said about Bitcoin, and I like what his advisors are saying, and I think it's going to be good for the world. Just remember that he's power hungry. He can turn on a dime. So just be very wary and put up your guard. But let's try to make the most of this opportunity. You know what I mean?
Back to the show in a moment. Have you thought about upgrading to multi-signature? Unchained Capital building Bitcoin native financial services on the foundation of multi-signature. So they create multi-signature vaults, and you can use these for very secure long-term storage and minimize the single points of failure. If you need help, they offer a concierge service where they will ship you 2 hardware wallets, they'll answer your questions, and deposit $1,000 of Bitcoin in your vault. You can get $50 off by using the code Livera. Unchained also offer an OTC desk, and they offer advanced business accounts, as well as a range of educational material on their website. Go find out more at unchained.com. Upgrade your Bitcoin security with the Cold Card. The Cold Card is my favorite Bitcoin hardware wallet, and it's created by CoinKite at coinkite.com. The Cold Card offers all sorts of features. You can use it totally air-gapped. You literally don't have to plug it into a computer. You can ferry the data across using a micro SD card and use it with wallets like Spectre Desktop or Sparrow or Electrum or Blue Wallet. Cold Card works in a single signature setup as well as part of a multi-signature setup. So you've got a lot of different options. It is PSBT native. That's partially signed Bitcoin transactions. It's got all sorts of features. So make sure you go get one at coinkite.com and use the code Livera to get a discount on yours. And finally, the Cipher Grid. This is a metal backup seed product for your Bitcoin seed. So the Cipher Grid is created by CipherSafe. You can find them at ciphersafe.io. And the Cipher Grid is a new product coming out. You can get it on pre-order. It's the best value in the industry. You get everything you need for $59. It's got 2 stainless steel plates for all 24 seed words. You've got privacy by default. The plates are facing each other. It's got a tamper-evident seal provided and an automatic center punch provided alongside it. And just like all CipherSafe products, it's made from stainless steel, it's fireproof, rustproof, and waterproof. So make sure you and your family can recover if an accident were to occur. Go and order yours at ciphersafe.io and use the code Livera for a discount. Back to the show. Yeah, right. And so one concern could also be, to what you were saying, is that maybe a lot of the Bitcoin ends up in the government wallet and isn't actually held by the people, right? Or something like that. Maybe there's a concern like that.
Yes.
Like withdrawal, yeah.
Yes. So if the government wallet does not allow payments to outside the system or withdrawals, yes, then we have a huge problem. But I think that Jack Mallers would resign before he gets that far. But maybe too much trust in him. I don't know. Like we all just need to be vigilant and watch this thing. But I'm very encouraged that they're hiring him.
Of course.
And his team and Rockstar Dev. I mean, come on, Rockstar Dev. Is he really going to freaking dagger us? I mean, maybe, but I mean, probably not, man. So, I think that if anything, if they're going to be the ones building out that infrastructure, they're going to build it the right way. And, I think people need to know there is going to be that compromise where there's this like partially custodied kind of volatility protected checking account type service for the people, because that's just where we are in the world right now. I mean, but it'll have the ability to like just use native Bitcoin also. Again, getting back to Alan Farrington's essay, if Bitcoin, if it was money, what would it look like? Well, it would look like this. It would be going through this process where it's not just like, it doesn't just go from store value to unit of account in a day. It goes through the medium exchange process over time to becoming that unit of account. And we're not there yet. And clearly the unit of account there outside of Bitcoin Beach is still dollars. But hey, it's bullish that in some communities in this country, the unit of account is already Satoshis. So I mean, that's really crazy. So again, we're on this journey of monetization. And this is just such a massive step in that direction, man.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see it. And I also was reflecting back to some of my early years in the Bitcoin space. And now I often speak about this. In 2013 and 14, there was this whole idea of merchant adoption, right? So, and then what happened in practice is people would pressure businesses to say, hey, you should take Bitcoin for payment.
Yeah.
And they did.
Right.
And then very few people actually paid, right? And then it's sort of like, well, this time around, 7 or 8 years onwards, now we've got Lightning. Now we've got more education. We have so much more adoption. Maybe this time is really going to be a lot more different. And I guess this time it might be that it's not instant. Everyone's just going to instantly convert and use Bitcoin straight away. But maybe there'll be some people who just stay within the US dollar system, but it's growing, right? It's the number one app. So I wonder, what if they set up all this infrastructure and very few people actually use it?
Well, I think it's time. Like this is Bitcoin's time because this couldn't have worked even a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. We are at a time now where the infrastructure can support it. And pre-Lightning, obviously in a high fee environment, you can't do daily payments with Bitcoin. I mean, the fees are going to get $10, $20, $30, $40. They're going to keep rising in fiat terms as we go forward into the future because both they'll get higher, but also fiat will become debased. So it's like on both fronts, right? So now we have Lightning and it's robust enough and it works. And like, as someone who's been trying to follow Lightning apps and use it, like really, I mean, we're really, really making some big leaps here. Like I was able to really easily send Lightning payment within seconds on stage with Jack Dorsey, which was a nervous experience for me to try and do that. I'm either going to be the enemy of everybody involved in Lightning if this doesn't freaking work, or it'll be really sweet and people will notice for a small moment and then whatever. So the risk reward was not great, but I really just wanted to do it to show the world that it was doable. And I'm just like, all right, I'm just going to take my, non-custodial Moon wallet. I'm just going to make a quick payment and I'm just going to teleport a bearer asset around the world on stage with Jack Dorsey. I just think that's cool. So we're there with that. And I know that you've got these, devs and engineers today reflecting on Twitter. I mean, this is a moment for them to take a bow and step back and be like, wow, all this hard work, like we're not where we need to be, but like we are on our way, man. Like both at the dev level and the app level. I mean, we are on our way and we were not a couple years ago. So I think as for why it could work this time around, there's two main things. One is just like the technology and development infrastructure is just where it needs to be. It's so much better than it was before, and in the right way, not the big block way, like the sort of actual way to scale Bitcoin. Number two is a socioeconomic thing, right? So it's like we thought, people like me especially, I thought this was going to be this like decade of like Gresham's law, where it was like, unless you really needed to spend your Bitcoin, you were going to save it and spend your depreciating fiat. I really believed that whole like bad money drives out the good thing. What I didn't see coming was this was a government and I knew it was a possibility, but I just didn't see it coming this quickly in the second year of the decade that you'd have legal tender. Okay, so now all of a sudden, what happens if merchants prefer Bitcoin? Because that was always the idea in my head, is I thought it would switch to Tier's law or whatever, which is that the good money drives out the bad. I thought that would happen in 1 or 2 cycles from now, when people in America would want to be selling their homes and they would not want your fiat, they would want Bitcoin. That is now set to an accelerated pace. The idea of that happening, especially obviously in El Salvador, but you're going to have merchants who really either they want Bitcoin, they like the experience of Lightning, whatever it is, they like the ideology of it, they like the ease of it, whatever they like, they don't like the state, whatever it is, whatever it ends up being, and they may prefer Bitcoin and they may provide a discount if they're willing to accept less Bitcoin than dollars for a payment, and that's where you start to see this Tier's law thing happening, and that's where the payments could actually really come alive. And it helps that it organically has grown out of Bitcoin Beach in an organic way. I think the one main issue, I guess, with the earlier stuff when you were getting involved early was it was non-organic. It was people trying to force it to make it work, and now it's just flowing. It's just doing it on its own, right?
Yeah.
It's growing out of this little community in El Salvador, and it's going to spread throughout the nation. And that way, it's there are going to be people at every step who are using it, are users, right? There's tens of thousands of users spread across El Salvador. So now it's going to be I don't know, we have to use this Bitcoin thing now. Oh, well, my cousin or my nephew or my son, he knows how to use it. I'll have him come tell me. So I wouldn't undercount the network effects here. So I'm much more bullish about it actually unfolding, and for us to start to see pockets of the world where Bitcoin is preferred and for payments. I mean, I think that's something that I will admit I did not see coming this early.
Yeah, that's really cool. And to add to what you were saying there around network effects, I remember one of the things people used to say was, oh, it's one thing to take payment in Bitcoin, but then if you as a merchant can't pay your suppliers with Bitcoin, you can't close that loop. And there was this idea of, oh, someday we're going to close that loop. We're going to have the circular economy.
Right.
This is actually going to be a really interesting experiment, because now the Salvadorian merchants can pay most of at least their local suppliers with Bitcoin, right? Because everything's Bitcoin, right? So that's at least one step towards. So it's going to be really interesting.
Right. And apps like Strike allow you to seamlessly connect anywhere in the world via Bitcoin, but through dollars as well. So it's that's why, Strike's this great bridge technology, it is a technology of the moment. It won't last forever, in my opinion. Meaning, or the company may, but the particular product as of now acts as this neobank is what Mahlers calls it. It's kind of like a technological, chronological bridge between where we are and where we want to go. And to get there, we do, as evidenced by what you're watching, if there had been no strike, there'd be no bill. Okay, there'd be no bill. There'd be no legal tender in Salvador. We'd have a different outlook on Bitcoin. We'd have different ideas. We've really been jump started by this product, which is a way to really connect the old and the new systems. And again, what would it look like if it happened? Obviously, it would look like this, right? We would have these bridge companies that are trying to bridge the old and the new. So that's what you're seeing there, and it's remarkable to watch it unfold live. And we're all just watching. We don't know what's going to happen or how long it's going to take, and none of this is priced in. It's so crazy to me. I was thinking okay, we've got nation state adoption, we've got Taproot activation, we've got a growing global user base, increasing mobile adoption, incredible mobile improvements in user design. We've got all the smart macro investors now are in, right? Dalio, all the rest, tons more in. You haven't heard about it. They're all buying, small spot here, there, tons of people coming in through NYDIG that you don't know about. Like, and that's the signal. And the noise is literally everything you read in the newspaper or watch on TV or listen to on the radio. So like those of us in the know, I mean, I'm just so much more excited about Bitcoin now than I was a few months ago when the price was twice as high. Like this is the signal. The freaking nation state adoption of Bitcoin is really what we're after. And of course it'll be great like in the future when the price is higher, that'll lead to more interest, and it's all this feedback loop. But from like a political point of view, political philosophy point of view, and economic point of view, this is what we're going for. And out of nowhere it happens. I think a lot of people had seen Bitcoin Beach, some had even gone. And Peter McCormack, he's really been like, he's just been ranting about how amazing it is the last like 6 months. And apparently it was, apparently it was so amazing that the president of El Salvador was like, I'm sold. Let's make it legal tender. Like, I mean, that's how compelling what they were doing down there is. And I think a lot of people, including myself, maybe, didn't fully understand the vision and didn't really get that it was more than just like a small circular economy, that it was like a template for how you would change a country and a nation. So I'm excited. We're going to have Mike Peterson come to my event, the Oslo Freedom Forum, which we're going to have in Miami in October. And we're going to have him try and do some stuff around how to build this kind of community. Because now there's so many other people, activists from other countries, who want to rebuild what they built in El Salvador. They want to do it in Guatemala. They want to do it in Lebanon. And we want to facilitate his ability to like share his examples and hopefully we can spark some more change.
That's awesome, man. I'd love to get down to Bitcoin Beach myself, and when I can get out of here, which it's going to be soon, I'm going to get out. So I'm going to
oh yeah, dude, it'll be soon.
I'm going to get over there, and I'll try to get over to Miami for that as well. And let's chat a bit about HRF. I know you did some grants recently, so tell us a little bit about some of the grants you just did for that.
Yeah, well, essentially at HRF, at the Human Rights Foundation, we have this Bitcoin program where we've kind of got three spokes. We've got development, we've got education and awareness, which is, in large part, a lot of the stuff I'm doing around interviews, talks, public events, and then we have activist trainings, which we do kind of privately, but we've been doing those consistently, teaching activists, human rights activists, about how to use Bitcoin. That's been going really well. We were able to work with some of the folks on the teams at Blue Wallet, Moon Wallet, others to understand how to earn, receive, store, send Bitcoin. People love it. And then we were working with Paxful as well to when these people need to sell it, so that they understand how it works, right, into fiat as effectively as they can. But yeah, on the dev front, we started the Bitcoin Development Fund about a year ago. We've given out around at today's prices somewhere around $800,000, a little more than $800,000 of Bitcoin and dollar grants, mostly Bitcoin grants. Want to support privacy and decentralization and resilience and accessibility. But it's funny because like obviously like every dev you're gonna fund, you're gonna support is related to freedom, right? It's like it's all connected. But we ended up being able to do a really large round because two guys from Korea, an investor and a teacher, an educator, they gave us $150,000 of Bitcoin to give out, and we got some other money from a VC and from this whole Pizza Day thing that we did with Pomp, and we were able to parlay that into a big round where we did 50K dev grants in USD, but in Bitcoin, but like 50K of the Bitcoin to Calvin Kim, and we're working on. We worked on that with BitMEX. So they gave him 100, we gave him 50 for the next year to work on what he's doing relating to Utrixo and making it easier to run a node, which is really exciting, obviously. Then we gave 50K to Dhruv, to
Dhruv Mehta,
to Dhruv, to Dhruv Mehta, and he's also being supported by Gemini and by Square Crypto
and Gemini, yeah.
And he's working on helping nodes fight Sybil attacks, which is really, really neat. And then we also gave, we're in the process of giving 50K Bitcoin to Abu Bakr, who's in northern Nigeria, actually. And he went through chain code, and now he's trying to work on like some software that is like good wallet software for the Nigerian context. And then he'll kind of use our funding as bridge funding to then go apply to something more formal later this year or something like that. We're really happy to support all three of them. We also gave some gifts to the Breeze and Sphinx teams to do some privacy stuff that we wanted to collaborate on. So I think Think It Breeze, they're going to put that to bounties to help with Tor adoption, as well as integrating with Matrix, which is neat. And then on the Sphinx side, they're building out this like a directory where you can just like look up and just like give people money. So that's kind of the idea. We really would like to make it easier for people to tip activists. And I'll mention another idea related to that in a second. And then the final gift was to support Arabic Hodl, who's been doing this incredible work translating stuff from everybody from Safe to Breedlove to Nick Carter, all these different people writing about Bitcoin. He's translating it all into Arabic, and he's incredibly productive. So we wanted to give him some money to keep doing that. So it's an exciting round. I mean, we want to continue to focus on the wider world around us, and it's exciting to support devs who are not. I love devs in the US too, but like it's kind of our mandate makes us well placed to support people in emerging markets and stuff. So, or at least outside of the common areas. So, of that round, 5 of the 6 gifts were out there abroad. And then the last thing I'll just say on this note is for people listening, we're really interested in this idea of like a passive alphanumeric Lightning identity that you could put into, for example, your Twitter bio, right? So this is the dream, right? So for 2 reasons, because if it worked and enough people started doing it, then Twitter would be sort of like forced to integrate, like it would force them to add a feature. Do you know what I mean? Like if we could kind of front run them a little bit, kind of like what Clubhouse did. Clubhouse, okay, Twitter Spaces. Well, if all the activists in the world could easily just add like an alphanumeric to their Twitter bio, and then that could be like a lightning tip place. I mean, okay, now we're talking. The other thing is it's just generally speaking, it'd be so powerful for activists. So I know that there's like some discussions around how to do this, and people are divided, and that's fine. And it's exciting to see different approaches. Like some people think you can do it with like LNURL, but there's like an IP address issue there, if I'm not mistaken, with regard to privacy that people are debating about how to solve. Other ways to do it, but basically I talked to a lot of Lightning folks when I was in Miami, and I think there's like consensus that it's doable, and it's like maybe in the next year. But I'll just say that if anyone listening wants to work on that, like we'd love to support you. So please reach out to us. We think this is just like, after doing a couple of years of research and talking to the activists, this is what they need. It may not be necessarily what devs want to work on, but I can tell you that this is what the activist world needs, is this sort of a functionality. So that's where we're probably heading next, and we'll announce another round kind of in September or something like that.
Yeah, that's cool. And so on the donations point, it's like, there's BIP47 stealth addresses or paynims if you're using Samurai Wallet, but then that's all on chain. So
we have so we have that really cool
Lightning,
but it's, first of all, it's all on chain, which is just sort of a non-starter because we really want to focus on Lightning here. But it's also like it's a little, I mean, I love what they're doing. The Samurai Wallet, incredible, and I recommend it all the time, but it is a little limiting, and just because it's the only, and I know that there's reasons for that, don't need to get into the politics of it, but the reality is that like all the other wallets don't incorporate it with it, right? So it is just miles away from the convenience of a Lightning tip. I mean,
right, and then the activist is left either trusting someone, right? They might have to use, say, OpenNode, right? Which again may not depending on the political or the KYC aspects of it. You might not be able to do that. And then the other way is, well, spin up a BTC Pay server, but again, that's not that's not feasible for everyone, and then you still need Lightning capacity, and you still have to like give them somewhere to go,
Right. So we run our own node, and we run our own BTC Pay, and it's an incredible project, and we love them. And they're going to be coming to the Oslo Freedom Forum too to help folks. I mean, we want to get as many activist groups as possible set up with BTC on their websites for incoming donations. And of course, we accept Lightning, and we've gotten tons of that. And we have had a lot of amazing help from the community to help us with inbound liquidity, et cetera, et cetera. But that's a lot. I mean, it requires a staff member on your team to spend a lot of time learning about Bitcoin and how to set it up. We're talking about something a little more simple here that works with like an open source phone wallet, right? Where you'd be accepting, donations, and then as they come in, you would be sending to cold storage, like you'd be sweeping it in like over time, right? But just the ability to have this passive identifier that could dump into your wallet in a way that's privacy protecting is certainly the dream. So we'll see where we go with that.
Yeah. And I think that's also the reality for many new people coming in, is that, while we would love everyone to come in and be fully self-sovereign from the get-go, go, the reality is a lot of people will come in starting on a custodial wallet, right? And even with Bitcoin Beach, right, they have what we might call community custodial, right? And so
Exactly.
and I think that's going to be the same story with El Salvador. A lot of the new people coming in will use a custodial service. They may be using, the Strike or the government wallet. They may be using Blue Wallet, Wallet of Satoshi, or some of the other ones out there. And then the hope is that over time, people graduate up into more levels of sovereignty. And perhaps then that's a similar thing in terms of what this means for human rights, is that it will accelerate.
This is what I'm saying. I mean, you could go ahead and put you could make a Strike URL right now, but you got to do KYC, and it's we're looking for something that's a non-custodial, and again, where the public key is being rotated between donations type thing. I read, of course, Anthony Roning's great piece on Lightning privacy, and the cool part is all of these issues can be probably mitigated at the wallet level, right? So it's a lot of the issues with Lightning are being improved now, and we know what they are, and they're definitely getting improved. So this I see hopefully as a piece to that, where you're receiving inbound and you have no way of knowing where it's coming from. That's really the key, I think. And then, hey, if you tip somebody and you want them to know, you just tell them, hey, I sent you this amount. And that's kind of how it works with us. But anyway, yeah, really exciting times at HRF, obviously, as well. And just, that final comment on, a lot of people are, this guy in El Salvador is, he's not democratic. But I think, again, you're missing the bigger point here that, again, he could have banned Bitcoin or had some China coin or surveillance coin, but he went with the freedom money option, and he can't stop it. And I think there was always going to be a first country to adopt. I thought it was going to be like a rogue regime. I thought it was going to be like a North Korea or like a Venezuela and Iran or something like that. El Salvador is a U.S. ally. It's dollarized. It's got a democratic process that's certainly not perfect, but it's there are elections. This is not like Cuba. Do you know what I mean? So it was kind of crazy to see it happen in a country like that. So I mean, it's at the end of the day, people are going to complain about everything. Oh, I wish it could have been a different country. Well, which one? It's not going to be an advanced democracy because we're too comfortable and we would never be that radical, and we're too trying to preserve what we have, and we're much more likely to be rolling out the CBDCs, to be honest, out in our countries like Australia and the United States.
Yeah.
We're not going to go on the Bitcoin standard first. That was never going to be in the cards. So it was always going to be one of these fringe countries. And you know what? It's pretty ideal compared to what it could have been. Really, we could be arguing about Iran right now, or about Venezuela, or about North Korea or something, and that would have made it really difficult. Even though I still think it would have been something to be cheered. This is just really an interesting fit for a lot of different reasons. So what a remarkable moment in time here.
Yeah, it's crazy, hey. Look, Alex, thanks very much for joining us. Listeners, make sure you follow Alex on Twitter at Gladstein. Find him at hrf.org. Is there anywhere else you'd like people to find you, Alex?
No, you can just follow me on Twitter. Check us out at hrf.org. The Dev Fund, if you want to learn more about that, is hrf.org/DevFund. And then if you want to come to the Oslo Freedom Forum, we're going to have a Bitcoin track. It's going to be really cool. It's going to be October 4th and 5th in Miami. We will have a full day of Bitcoin programming that will be a little more intimate. It won't be like a giant hall. It's going to be kind of seminar style, where we're going to have human rights activists and other interested people in for a full day. We'll start with the political history of Bitcoin, which I think is important, and the cypherpunks, which I think is important for activists to know about. And then we'll go into more how to use wallets, how to use multi-sig, how to use Lightning. We're going to have Mike from Bitcoin Beach talking about how to build a community. We're going to have a lot of hands-on help from the BTC Pay team too, because we want any activist who's at that event, whether they be American or Australian or Cuban or wherever they come from, Chinese, we want them to be able to set up a BTC Pay instance on their site so that they can accept Bitcoin in an open source, decentralized way. So we're pretty excited about that. So if you go to oslofreedomforum.com, you can apply to attend, and just put in that you're a Bitcoiner, and we'll get you the reg link. But excited about that and everything else that's to come. And thanks again for having me, Stephan.
Thanks, Alex. So get the show notes and the transcript over at stephanlivera.com. Thanks for listening, and I will see you in the Citadels.